In the last 2 weeks, the Ontario and the federal government made two of the biggest housing announcements we've seen in years. They eliminated the HST on new homes and they cut development charges in half. The headlines are calling it historic. Politicians are calling it the solution to the housing crisis. But I wanted to slow it down and actually break this down for you, because depending on who you are and what you're trying to do, this either changes everything, changes nothing, or might actually do very little for people it claims to help. All right, let's get into it. Let's start with exactly what was announced, because I want to make sure you actually understand what these numbers mean in real dollars. First, the HST relief. As of April 1st, 2026, the full 13% HST is being removed on new homes in Ontario up to $1 million. That's a saving of up to $130,000 on purchase. For homes between $1 million to $1.5 million, that $130,000 maximum rebate stays in place. Above $1.5 million, it starts to phase down. This applies to agreements signed between April 1st, 2026 and March 31st, 2027. Only so this is the 1-year window and the clock is already running. Second, it was the development charge reductions. The federal and Ontario government just committed $8.8 billion over 10 years to cut municipal development charges by up to 50% across the province for the next 3 years. Now, for context, in the GTA, development charges on a single home can be as high as $130,000, and these charges have gone up by as much as 1,000% over the last 15 years. When you add up all the government fees, charges, and taxes together, they've historically added 25 to 30% to the cost of every single new home built in Ontario. So cutting that in half sounds massive. But let me tell you why the reality is more complicated and why this isn't the home run the government is selling it as. A lot of people online are calling this as a developer bailout. And I understand the frustration, but I don't think that's a complete picture. Developers didn't create this cost structure on their own. For 15 years, all these levels of government stack fees after fee on top of new construction. Development charges went up 1,000% in 15 years. It was policy decisions after policy decision, and developers had no choice but to pass every one of these costs down to buyers. That's a big reason why new homes became so unaffordable. The government created the problem, and now the government is trying to walk it back. So, are some of these measures designed to give relief to developers who are under pressure? Yes. But the DC cuts and HST relief are also structural changes that, if builders actually pass savings through to the consumer, it will genuinely reduce the cost of building new homes. The problem is, as I'm going to show you, is that cutting the cost side of the equation doesn't automatically fix the demand side. Let's talk about condos first. For example, if you're buying a $900,000 condo that previously had $117,000 in HST, is now essentially tax-free on that portion. That's real money. But there is a problem. For developer to actually start building a new condo tower, they need to pre-sell at least 75% of the units before a bank will finance construction. That is the threshold. And right now, GTA condo prices have already fallen close to 30% from their 2022 peak. Demand is soft. The investor buyers who used to absorb a massive share of pre-construction units have largely been disappeared. So you can cut the HST, you can cut the development charges, you can make units technically cheaper on paper, but if you can't get enough buyers to commit to 75% of a 500 unit building before a shovel goes into the ground, the project doesn't move. The incentives don't matter if the demand isn't there to trigger construction in the first place. And that demand problem is not something the government can fix with a tax break. By the way, you may have also heard about the $1.3 billion provincial fund buying up already completed unsold condos and turning them into rentals. That gives some developers that are holding inventory a way out. But for broader condo pipeline going forward, it doesn't solve the fundamental demand issue that I just described. Now let's talk about purpose-built rental, because on the surface this looks like where these incentives are best suited, and in some ways that's true. But there's a major problem here too. Purpose-built rental is fundamentally different from a condo. With a condo, pre-sale from buyers help fund construction. The developer uses deposit to get financing. With purpose-built rental, the developer carries the entire building on their balance sheet. That means significantly more equity required upfront. And the bank doesn't look at pre-sales. They look at projected rental income to determine how much they'll lend. Here's the issue. Rents in the GTA have been falling. We've seen rental prices drop meaningfully over the last 18 months as new supply hit the market. At the same time, demand softened. So a purpose-built rental developer still has to walk into their lender and show a pro forma that works at today's rents, not 2021 or 2022 rents. And for a lot of projects, that math still doesn't work even after you cut development charges in half. The government can reduce the cost side of the equation, but they cannot manufacture the income side. And for purpose-built rentals, the income side is everything. So if these measures don't fully fix condos and don't fully fix purpose-built rental, where do they actually matter? The real impact of these incentives isn't going to show up in the big towers. It's going to show up in the smaller projects. Think about like fourplexes, sixplexes, 4+ garden suites, these type of missing middle housing. These are projects that the margins are very thin to begin with, where a local builder or even a homeowner adding a unit to their property was sitting on numbers that just barely didn't work. When you cut development charges by 50% and remove HST on construction under $1 million, you might be closing that gap. The difference between a project that pencils and the one that doesn't could literally come down to $40,000 or $50,000 in government fees. And these announcements could cover that. These smaller projects are also much faster to build and much easier to finance than a tower. So if you're going to see any meaningful near-term increase in housing supply come out of these announcements, I genuinely believe it's going to come from the bottom up, from smaller infill projects in existing neighborhoods, not from a wave of new condo towers suddenly breaking ground. So let's bring this back to you, because at the end of the day, what matters is how this affects your situation. If you're a buyer looking at new construction in Ontario, the window between April 2026 and March 2027 is genuinely one of the strongest entry points we've seen in years. Prices are already down 30% from 2022 peak. You've got up to $130,000 in HST savings on the table, and development charge reduction are starting to flow through into project pricing. That is a real combination of savings hitting at the same time. If new construction has been on your radar, this is the window to pay attention. For investors, be careful. The incentives are real, but they don't change the fundamental of the rental income story. Run your numbers at today's rent, not the rents you remember from 2 years ago. If the deal only works on optimistic assumptions, the deal doesn't work. And if you're a homeowner who's had a fourplex or a garden suite in the back of your mind but could never quite make the numbers add up, I genuinely encourage you to revisit that now. The HST relief may have just changed the outcome on your specific project, whatever your situation is, whether you're a buyer, a seller, or investor, or just trying to understand what all of this means for the value of your home. I'm happy to sit down with you and give you a straight answer. You can book a free 30-minute call with me at the link in the description, or reach out directly by phone or email. Everything is down below. I'll see you in the next one.